So, Stipe won. Um, you know, many months ago, when this fight was first announced, this trilogy fight, I made it clear that I didn't like that it's taking place. I would rather DC had retired after the second fight. I didn't think he had anything to prove. I didn't think he had anything to gain from winning against Stipe a second time. His loss in the second fight was nothing to be ashamed of. He had won 2 rounds, arguably 3 rounds, definitely 2 rounds against Miocic. It was only in the 4th round that Miocic kind of turned it around and was able to get a stoppage after landing some nice body shots and opening up DC for the headshots. It was a good couple of fights. They were 2 evenly matched fighters, and that was fine. Even the first fight, which ended in the first round, was fairly even before DC got that finish. So I didn't see the need for a third fight. And I would have preferred if DC had just retired. But he wanted the trilogy, they made the trilogy, and we saw what happened. Now, did DC look like a bum? Of course not. He looked alright, but it's just that time was not on his side. And just the fact that the rivalry had been fairly evenly matched was a credit to DC, because he was the older man as well as the smaller man. But whether it's right or wrong, right now, his resume and his legacy has taken a hit. It shouldn't be that way because he's 41 years old and nothing he does at this point should really count against him, but that's how it is in the public perception. So first 2 rounds were just so tense and so exciting. It was very hard to judge these until the very end of each respective round, the first 2, because DC had a near knockdown at the end of the first that kind of secured the round for him, and Miocic ended the second round in mount, laying down some strikes on DC, and DC was just holding on for life. And he really didn't recover from that until maybe midway through the third round. Third round, the fight slows down. Miocic is pushing Cormier against the cage. He's winning on points. Cormier seems content just to let it go on and to recover because he wasn't in any real danger there. But Miocic won the round on points. And at the end of that round is where we get a big eye poke from Miocic. This is something that has been such a talking point for this trilogy, for every fight of this trilogy. So DC had an eye poke earlier in this fight, and then Stipe had a big eye poke in the third round, which may have compromised DC for the remainder of the fight. We don't really know if this affected the result. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but it was big. And we can see from the swelling in Cormier's eye that he was definitely affected by it. But Cormier was upset. The referee, Mark Goddard, didn't notice it, but there's nothing he can do about that. And then the 4th and 5th rounds, I thought the 4th was DC's, but most of the judges gave it to Stipe. And then the 5th round, Miocic kind of wins on output and on control, although I think DC landed some really heavy hands in that round and deserved at least some consideration for that one. But in any case, no one is really going to be up in arms about a decision for Stipe. But who cares though? That's the thing. Like, why did this fight have to happen? It was a weird fight with a questionable outcome just due to how compromised Cormier was. But then again, you could say that about the first fight as well for Miocic. But I just didn't think it needed to happen. Cormier had nothing to prove. And now his legacy, whether it's correct or not correct, it's tarnished. He says he stands by his decision to retire after this fight. I hope that's the case, because he has no reason to fight again. He has a nice job right now commentating. He's good at it. And he did everything he can do in the cage. And everyone has to stop at some point. He's 41 years old, very long combat sports career, very accomplished combat sports career. He doesn't need to fight again, and I'm glad that he has said that he's done. For Stipe, this is a huge legacy boost. Again, whether it's deserved or not, it's a huge legacy boost because right now he's 2-1 against Cormier, regardless of the circumstances. That's a big point in his favor, in addition to having so many UFC title defenses, being the longest reigning UFC heavyweight champion. But I don't know. So what's next for Stipe? Well, the consensus number one contender right now is Francis Ngannou. Obviously, Francis Ngannou lost to Stipe a couple years ago in a very dominant performance, one that it took a while for Ngannou to kind of recover from that loss. But at the same time, Ngannou seems to be mentally, at least, in a much better position. Although in terms of fighting ability, we don't really know if he is more well-rounded or more improved because his fights have been so short and he's been finishing guys so fast. But it's still an intriguing fight. Any fight with Ngannou is intriguing. And there's other guys as well, but of course Ngannou is would be on the short list of just him to challenge for the belt, considering his biggest loss having been against Stipe and him being on such an impressive win streak right now. But yeah, for someone who likes DC, respects DC, it's tough to watch a fight like that where you kind of know the outcome. He had said after the second fight, I didn't stick to the game plan because I was having success with the boxing. I fell in love with my hands. But in this fight we saw, it's not easy for a 41-year-old man to implement that kind of game plan, especially against a guy like Stipe, who is so big and so strong, and he has a good wrestling pedigree. It's hard to keep him down, and it takes a lot of energy to take him down. So it's kind of like a high risk, low reward kind of thing, where if DC uses so much energy to take him down and has nothing to show for it, well, that's no good. You're in a 5-round fight as a heavyweight. You don't want to waste energy. So, not that I know anything or not that my predictions are ever right, but this fight kind of went how I expected, and that makes me sad.